So if you're a freelance worker or what they call a gig economy worker, do you have to pay taxes on that income? Well, I'm going to give you the short answer. The answer is yes. And that may be even though you don't get like a W-2 if you're an employee in some sort of freelance work, or a 1099 even, right? If you're doing something like DoorDash and such like that, you do have to pay taxes on this income. But the taxes work a little differently because most of the time with this gig economy and freelance type work, you are not an employee. You are in fact considered self-employed. So how do you report this income? So it depends. If you're in the services industry like a DoorDash and such like that, then you're a small business owner and you go ahead and you pay your taxes on a small business income tax return. A lot of times for people with a 1040, that's a Schedule C, a small business sole proprietorship income tax return that goes with your 1040. You'll go ahead and report your income and expenses there. Now, if you have rental income, like you have an Airbnb or such like that, there's where you're going to get in maybe some tricky areas on how you go report. It could be a Schedule C if substantial services are performed, or it could be a Schedule E if it's just sometimes some rental income in there. So it depends upon your situation. The important thing here is you need to keep records of your income and your expenses and make sure you take the expenses that you are allowed, because at the end of the year, you're going to self-report this income and their expenses. You may or may not get a 1099 for this income, maybe a 1099-K for merchant card transactions and such like that. You may get that type of income. Well, you'll need to go ahead and reconcile that to your return. But make sure you keep records, because the expenses are entirely up to how you need to go ahead and record them. So you need to have records for those. Another tip, you need to pay your taxes on this income quarterly. That means estimated tax payments. If you are a gig economy worker, chances are you are not an employee. You're self-employed, so you have to pay your own taxes, which could include the very expensive self-employment tax. What is that? Self-employment tax for people who have their own business, they must pay their own Social Security and Medicare tax, both their employee portion and the employer portion. If you had a W-2, that was withheld on you and your employer paid half of it. That's not the case if you get a 1099 and you're self-employed. You have to pay both of those amounts. That's 15.3%. There's also some special deductions that go along with being self-employed, so it can get fairly complicated. Now, your tip here is to make sure that you keep good records and know how much taxes you're going to end up owing at the end of the year, including that self-employment tax, because you're going to want to make quarterly estimated tax payments in order to avoid the estimated tax penalty. So if you're a freelance worker, a gig worker, your taxes just got complicated. Make sure you know the rules, make sure you report your income and your expenses and pay the right amount of tax owed.